and I'd like to talk to you today about how to make tasty meals on a budget. So, with the expense of Christmas just behind us and the ongoing restrictions meaning that a lot of people are still furloughed, working reduced hours, or even out of work, we're all looking at ways that we can save money without damaging our environment. A big way that we can all help cut energy and resource use, reduce carbon emissions, and save ourselves money is to reduce our food waste. So today I wanted to talk about ways that we can make great meals on a budget to keep ourselves and our families fed whilst trimming our food bills. So there's 5 key steps to this. So get prepped, shop smart, food swaps, cook differently, and looking after what's left. So I'm going to try and give you some tips that you can use to do each of these 5 things that will hopefully help. Okay? So we will start with get prepped. Now, it might sound obvious, but the better prepared you are, the easier it is. So plan your meals and write a shopping list. This might take a little bit of time, but it often makes the shopping quicker and it keeps you on track whilst you're in the shops. Keep track of what's in the freezer and the cupboards. If you get a chance to make a list of what you have that you can update as you go, it makes it really easy to check what you've got already in, so you can update the list, update your list as you go. It's really easy to check what you've got in to avoid buying duplicates. So a little whiteboard, for example, on the inside of the cupboard door or on the outside of the freezer is a really handy way to do that. Plan meals that will use up things that you've got in. So if you have a cupboard full of rice, plan meals that will use it up rather than lots of pasta-based meals, for example. Meal prep. If you're still going out to work, make lunches in advance or the night before. Tasty, so you can avoid picking something up while you're on the way. This goes for other meals too. If you often find that by the time you start making tea, a takeaway seems easier, try prepping ahead. I understand it's not always that straightforward, but if you get into the habit of it, it's a great time saver. So prep tea while the kids have a nap, while you've got 10 spare minutes, or even just in the morning before you go to work, so it's ready in a flash once you want it. Shop smart. So some of these might seem really obvious, but they can all make a big difference to the cost of your shopping. So the first, and probably the biggest of these, is don't shop when you're hungry. It's a lot easier to resist temptation if you've eaten. Okay? Shop online if you can. It's a lot easier to stay in your budget and resist unnecessary items. And then if you're over your budget, it's really easy to review your whole basket and take out things you don't need or make swaps so that you meet your budget. If you'd rather go into the shop so you can pick your produce yourself, if you can, try using Scan and Shop. So a lot of the supermarkets have got either handsets or apps that you can use. It's a great way to make sure that you stay in your budget and prevent any nasty surprises at the till, because you can see how much your shopping is going to cost you as you add things. Shop locally and in season. So visit your local market, the butcher, the greengrocer, those sort of places. It's often a cheaper way to shop while supporting local businesses. And if you buy foods that are in season, they're usually cheaper. If you're not sure what is in season, it's always a good idea to ask the people that run, for example, greengrocers and butchers. They're really well informed and they'll help you out. And if you explain to them you're trying to shop on a budget, they'll often suggest cheaper alternatives and give you advice on how to cook things. So, shop during happy hour. Now, I'm afraid this doesn't mean margaritas while you shop. But if you get used to your local store, you can tend to find out what time of day it is that they reduce items. So hit the reduce shelves, look for the whoop stickers. It's a great way to save. But remember, it's only a bargain if you use it. So don't go crazy, but just make sure you're looking for things at the best possible price. Use common ingredients through the meals that you plan so you can buy in bulk and save some money. So, for example, a big tray of beef mince that you can use in a whole range of dishes like chili or spag bol, lasagna, cottage pies, for example, or a big bag of potatoes or carrots. Um, Make sure that you compare pre-packed and loose fruit and veg so that you get the best price. And if your supermarket has wobbly veg, for example, don't be afraid to use it. A carrot, even if it's wonky, is still tastes the same. That's a really good way you can save some money. And a lot of that is food that has only recently been available in supermarkets and previously was thrown away. Buy frozen fruit and veg. Now, this might seem like an odd one, but frozen veg is often cheaper than fresh. It's still packed with nutrients and it often comes pre-prepared, so it can save you some time too. So, for example, if you only ever need half an onion, rather than buying 3 big onions, consider buying pre-chopped frozen onion so you can just take out what you need. The next one is buy a whole chicken. So if you eat a lot of chicken, consider buying whole chicken instead of chicken breasts, for example. The whole chicken is cheaper. You get a lot of the more flavourful meat in there as well. And you can either sort of fillet it and chop it up into different joints yourself, or cook it whole and then use the meat for different things. This one might sound daft, but check the portion sizes before you buy. So always read the packaging, because you may find that you've been buying 6 portions of something and using it to feed 4 people. So it's always worth having a look. And some things you will be really surprised by. Beware of offers. So we'll want a bargain, but a deal is only a deal if you'll use it. Don't be tempted to buy something that you've no idea how to cook, you've never used before, just because it's cheap. Okay, be sure that you know what you're going to do with it. And there's no harm in having a little look on your phone while you're there to see what that could be. And the next one is use your supermarket points. So if you shop somewhere that gives you points or vouchers, have a good look at them and make sure you use them. So if it's money off or if it's a discount off something you buy regularly, they are a really good way to save on your shopping. Okay. That brings us on to food swaps. So there's some food swaps here. I'm going to give you some food swaps that you can consider that will save you money. And even just one swap could help cut your costs quite dramatically. And a lot of these are the sort of things that also will help cut down food waste. So my first one is eat more veg. Okay, it's filling, it's healthy, and it's cheap. Miss out meat. So cutting meat out of just one meal a week can have a dramatic effect on your budget and massively reduce your carbon footprint too. Okay, so that's worth thinking about. If you can swap meat for something like tofu, that makes a really big dint in both. If you can just miss it out altogether, that makes an even bigger impression. Use filling fibre. So sources of fibre like oats, brown rice, barley, buckwheat, whole wheat and couscous can keep you fuller for longer, and they're cheap to buy, and because they are dry, they keep for a long time. They don't go off quickly, and they're a really good thing to have in the cupboard. Use cheaper proteins. So cheap sources of protein like beans, lentils, pulses, chickpeas, baked beans, nuts, eggs, and even less well-used cuts of meat make a massive dint in your shopping bill when they're being used to replace meat or fish. A lot of these, again, particularly things like beans and lentils and pulses, are dried. They'll last for a long time. So over their lifetime, they will potentially save quite a lot of waste, and they're much more environmentally friendly to produce. So using cheaper cuts of meat like braising steak, shin or shoulder, they can be a lot cheaper to buy. They're packed full of flavour. They're best cooked long and slow. So you still get all the flavour, but actually they're cheaper for you, and they're cuts of meat that are often overlooked and can cause quite a big source of waste. If you shop at a butcher, have a chat with your butcher about how to cook it. Um, they might give you some really good advice on the best things to try. The next one is try cheaper brands or supermarket owned brands. So, in a lot of cases, you pay a lot for the name without much difference in taste. So, try a cheaper alternative. Even just dropping down one tier in branding can make a really big impact. Swap your snacks. So, swapping highly processed snacks for healthier alternatives that keep you fuller for longer, it's great for your budget and for your health. And if those, if you're swapping those for things like snacks of things like carrots, they're quite often things you've got in. So things that you might just leave at the bottom of your fridge until they go wobbly. So it's a great way to use up some of the stuff you've already got in the house. The next one is to cut down on luxuries. So fizzy drinks, crisps, snack bars, biscuits and cakes can all be really pricey without actually adding a lot to our diets. So try and limit those where you can. It might be that rather than having several different types of sort of luxury snack, you just have one and you maybe eat, sort of divide it up more sparingly so you don't have anything going to waste. Now this last one on this bit is potentially quite tricky, but if you can achieve it, it's a really good one. So toddlers eat the same. If you've got a toddler and you can get them to eat the same as the rest of the family, it'll save you a massive amount of money compared with buying pre-prepared toddler food. It can also save a lot of waste. So it's always worth getting them to try the food that the rest of the family's having. Obviously, you need to be careful with the ingredients. But actually, if you can switch them full time onto sort of the same food as everyone else, it will save you money. And by having a few things in the freezer that you can get to in a hurry, if something gets rejected, it's a really good way to make sure they've got variety in their diets whilst helping out. So our next big one is to cook differently. The way we cook really has a massive impact on the food that we buy and how much we spend. So making a few changes to how we cook can help us save money and cut down on food waste. The first thing to do is to get to know your kitchen, what you've got in, and plan how you're going to use it. A really good thing to do is get the kids involved in choosing and making meals so that they're more invested. It helps to cut down the number of rejections and cut waste, as well as teaching them a really good life skill. And at the moment, you never know, it might be part of their homeschooling. Keep a few dried herbs and spices in your store cupboard. They've got real flavour to them and are much cheaper and last a lot longer than buying fresh ones. Cook from scratch. Okay, so although it isn't always cheaper, it is usually healthier. And cooking from scratch gives you more opportunity to bulk out meals with veg and try some of those swaps that we mentioned before. Okay. Batch cook or double up. It's a great way to use up the food that you've got while making life easier for another day. So if you have a night where you have to work late or have a Zoom chat with friends or the kids have virtual clubs, it can be really hectic fitting cooking in and it's tempting to call a takeaway. But if you've got something like a curry, stew, pasta bake, bolognese that you can just defrost and reheat, it takes the pressure off, cuts costs, and it stops food waste. Look up cheap recipes. It can be really hard to work out how much a new meal will cost sometimes, but places like Tesco's have got some really tasty budget recipes where they've worked out the price. So it's really good. It's really useful when you're trying to plan your meals that will fit within your budget. This one probably sounds very obvious, but waste nothing. It's a very lofty aspiration, but be careful about how much you cook. And if you have leftovers, accidental or intentional, make sure that you use them up. Okay. And then the last one is eat smaller portions. So it might seem really obvious, but one way to cut back on what you spend on food is to prepare and eat less within reason. Okay, so this comes back to checking the packaging to see what the portion size should be. Because it's easy to make too much and then because it's on your plate, eat it. If you feel like this happens to you, try weighing portions to see how much a portion is versus what you usually cook. Or try serving food on smaller plates and serving food family style where it's in dishes in the middle and people help themselves, because it helps cut down food waste and it'll help you adjust your cooking appropriately. So, some tips on our last point then, so looking after what's left. When we buy, prepare, or cook too much, it's important to think about what we're going to do with what's left rather than putting it in the bin. So, leftovers are delicious food that we've paid for, prepared, and it seems a real shame for them to go to waste. So, portion leftovers into the right amount for an individual or the whole family and label them. Enjoy smaller leftover portions for lunch. Freeze any bread, meals, or suitable ingredients that you've got left over. But make sure that your freezer isn't a black hole. So, if you've got meals in your freezer, make sure that some of the dishes on your meal plan for the next week are things that are in there. Okay. And individual portions, why not have like a family potluck every once in a while where everyone picks their favourite thing and you sort of make yourself a little buffet to enjoy. It's a really good way to use up those leftovers you've got and make sure you've got good rotation of food in your freezer. And it also means that if you have, say, the last week before payday is always a bit tighter, it's a really good opportunity to cut your... So I know there's a lot in there, but if you choose just a few simple changes that you could make, it'll help you to save money and benefit the environment. Thank you for listening, and we will see you soon.